a daughter of St. Paul, a media literacy education specialist, and the founding director of the Pauline Center for Media Studies in Culver City, California, where she teaches courses on media literacy for catechists and adults. A world traveler, Sister Rose gives presentations and courses on media literacy around the globe. She's an award-winning author and a co-author of books on film, scripture, and media literacy. And in this session, Sister Rose will share her expertise to guide us in our call to be faithful citizens in the digital universe. And I just found out from Sister Beth Murphy that today came out the Flowcast for the Dominican Sisters of Springfield, and Sister Rose is featured on there, From Creating Content to Consuming Barbie, Navigating Media with Sister Rose Pacatte. So you might want to check that out as well. So thank you, everybody, and let's give a big warm welcome to Sister Rose.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's great to be here. Can you hear me? Okay, clearly? Okay, just want to make sure I put the mic on well. So it's been 9 years since the last time I spoke to this great assembly, and I'm just thrilled to be back here again. This is, if you want to take pictures of any of this anytime, you may, and I'll probably share this with the organization if you want to make this available to all the members. It's fine with me. But actually, you can just Google me, and you'll find me in all these places. Somebody said, a superior general of a community recently told me, why should we make our websites, worth people coming back to see? Why should we make them vibrant? Why should we put money into them? They're just a business card. And I'm thinking, no, websites are more than a business card. This is a business card. One slide in a PowerPoint. So, but it's just to tell you that you can find me anywhere. The one you want to maybe pay attention to there is toward the bottom. It says bemediamindful.org. That would be our community's media mindfulness website, and you'll find a lot of good information there. And also, if at some point you ever want to follow up with this presentation with getting a certificate in media literacy education online, you can do that. So here we go. As I said, it's been 9 years since Long Beach. And as a good teacher, right, what we're supposed to do in education is connect things, right? This is a connection. This is what the theme was last time, the heart of the story. And I think Anne's presentation this morning and then the one before lunch also connected with this idea of our telling stories. So 9 years on, we're still telling stories. But what has changed? AI. That's what's changed. Would you agree? Have you all tried it? Have you all gone to Chat GPT? If you haven't, you need to try it out, because the people with whom you're sharing faith have tried it out. And it can be very useful to you. For example, this is what I do before I talk. I always want to tell a joke. I always want to start by making people laugh, because I love jokes. But if you want a bad joke, a groanable joke, ask AI to write it for you. It thinks it's so smart. So, dear AI, well, you don't say dear, please write a joke that is appropriate for a gathering of Catholic nuns and Catholic communicators. This is what I got. The Bible and the cell phone. A nun was asked, "What's the difference between the Bible and your cell phone?" She replied, "The Bible is my guide to eternal life, and my cell phone is what I use when I can't find my Bible." I thought that was funny because my Bible is on my cell phone. How about you? But anyway, so I did this for another group, Catholic communicators in Baltimore in June. And I got 3 really bad jokes, but it told me at the beginning, be careful how you use jokes, because the same people won't understand the same joke the same way, and you might offend them, so be careful about that. AI is trying to tell me about being careful. I thought, again, AI will make you laugh, if nothing else. So my talk is on media mindfulness in a digital age, and It's one of my favorite topics. I seem to have started some kind of a thing over the last year. I think I've given a different version of it about 10 times. So it's very familiar territory, but looking at media mindfulness in a digital age was a new take on it, a new emphasis, shall we say. Okay, so my slides are a little confused. This is a good slide. I think you'll all agree with it. I used it 9 years ago. That's because I went backwards. Okay, let's see. Where did this term media mindfulness come from? Well, it was first articulated by a religious of the Sacred Heart of Mary, Sister Gretchen Haler, in 1996. And St. Mary's Press asked her to write a book about it. And it was really a prophetic foray into this whole idea that Christ came into the culture to redeem the culture, not to condemn the culture. And to look at it, what is salvific in the culture? What are our young people learning in the culture? How can they navigate it? And how can they critically engage in it? Using kind of a perspective of theological reflection, which is what we'll look at today. And then why should it be of interest to us? That would be the biggest question. Then Sister Gretchen and I were asked in 2007, 2008 to write, 2006 actually, to write an updated version of the book. So we came out with Media Mindfulness, educating teens about media and faith. And then we wrote another book for our publishing house for children. So we covered actually K through 12, for teachers K through 12. Because what my work is training the trainers. I want to train people who then have a greater outreach and can be an influence on others to be critical consumers through the lens of faith in our mediated world. Comes from our charism, from our constitutions, and it has been a recent development. Again, I'll be talking about this later, but it was a sister of the Humility of Mary from Iowa. There's Humility of Mary here, but they're not from Iowa. There she is. Sister Elizabeth Toman, who introduced the idea of media literacy at a Catholic media conference back in in Portland, Oregon, around 1996 or 97. And 1989, that's what it was. Because I went to England and got a master's degree in it. And when I came back in 1995, I was able to start integrating it into our apostolate, but also into teaching, into catechesis and evangelization. So this is where the origin of the term came from, was really with Sister Gretchen. It comes from media literacy education. Are any of you familiar at all with media literacy? Okay, some have heard the term, yes. Well, what is that? It's kind of a cerebral approach to the whole person. Media mindfulness is, rather. Media mindfulness is an inquiry and values-based approach to navigating our digital world. It follows the format of theological reflection, and it can be also used with the approach of Lectio Divina. So the idea of praying the media becomes something that we can do, such as praying the news, which can be an evening prayer, especially if you tape it first and then go through the ads. The point of departure is empathy and Catholic social teaching. That's when we bring in the whole person, because media literacy itself is a cerebral approach. Empathy is a kind of a new thing within the secular educational community, that they're starting to see that we can't just be thinkers. We have to look at the feelings and the behavior of people, of children. It's not enough to make sure our minds are in the right place. And then applying it within the context of stories. And even an ad can be a story. When you look at a paper ad, a print ad, you're looking at, what is the story here? A television commercial, there's a beginning, a middle, and an end. And it goes right to video games and social media. Going back a little bit, what is media literacy itself? It's basically the ability to access, analyze, evaluate, and create media of all forms. Of course, before 1995, when AOL came, when the internet went commercial, when it became available to everyone, until that, it was what we now call legacy media, which is print, film, radio, television. Now, of course, it's all digital. It's all converged into one apparatus, our cell phone or our computer. What's important is to remember, and I think Ann Garrido was talking about this morning, the whole thing about algorithms. And it's all about digital media operates in conjunction with various encoded machine-readable data formats of ones and zeros. It started in the 1940s, and it has progressed when the first digital computer was created, and it has just continued on. And now it's running all of our lives. Then Then there's been a further growth in media literacy. Again, we're on the cerebral level here, just barely moving now into the emotional level, and hopefully the behavioral, is critical media literacy. This has been developed by a couple of academics from UCLA, and I think they're very much on the right path, and it converges with a lot of our own mission, our own pastoral work. It sounds, again, cerebral, but it's analyzing the systems of big business, of big media. It's rooted in social justice. That's the difference between media literacy education and really growing it to make a difference in society and its application to social justice. Looking behind the scenes, looking at ownership, who owns it, what's the message, what are they trying to get out? And what does this mean for us? Because we also have these big means, even though maybe we're not Facebook, but we're using these means. We're able to apply them and to make them work for us. And this inquiry into power, to question power, of course, that's something that religious have been doing and doing well for a long time, is speaking truth to power, but questioning that power. These industries that are storytelling industries, those who tell the stories are the ones who are going to win. They're going to win the hearts and minds. The storytellers. So who has the truest, best story told in the languages that are suitable to the means that are used? For example, film. Have you all seen Christian films? Raise your hand if you've ever seen a Christian film. Okay, put your hand down. Raise your hand if you just loved it. Yeah, you know why? The thing about film, the language of film is to show, not to tell. But Christians have this need to tell exactly what you're supposed to understand, to make sure you get it, because they don't trust the audience to make meaning on their own. So how well do we use our video and our websites to show? Yes, of course, they're informational means too, but in the stories we tell, how well do we render? That was also Flannery O'Connor, the great Catholic novelist. Her idea was a good writer renders. She doesn't tell you what you're supposed to get out of it, which is why you can't understand her stories. But anyway, moving on.
Hi guys.
So here, this thing about social justice really got me about using media and even things like TikTok. At the conference for the National Media Literacy Education Association last year, they asked young people in high school to make short TikTok videos on social justice. And then we had to do the conference by distance. We weren't there in person. So they had a whole session with these young people brought in by Zoom, and they all presented their videos and what they did. But I was really taken with this one, so I thought I would share it with you about. Now this is more of an explainer, but it's a young person explaining it, so maybe that's a story too.
Hi guys, it's Tiana here with Namely. Today, let's talk about what role media literacy education can play in the ongoing fight for social justice and equity. From television to social media to news outlets, media plays a significant role in shaping how we see the world and understand different identities. Media literacy education equips us with the skills needed to question and evaluate content for misinformation, misrepresentation, and the perpetuation of discrimination and systemic inequality. Here are some questions to ask yourself when engaging with media. Who benefits from this narrative? What group is being represented by this narrative? What perspectives am I missing? How might this message inflict harm on marginalized communities? Does this message suggest racial stereotypes, discrimination, and/or uphold systemic inequity? How can this content or narrative incite positive social change? These questions can help you navigate the media landscape within the context of fighting inequity and working towards equality and inclusion. Thanks for watching.
So she's making bread during the whole time. Why? Why do you think? There's no right or wrong answer.
First of all, there's a lot of cooking videos on TikTok, so immediately someone might think it's a cooking video and get hooked.
There's a lot of cooking videos on TikTok, and so maybe someone would be attracted to this for that reason. Yeah. Yes?
It's a very information-heavy talk that she's giving, so by putting something that's pretty mundane but still visually interesting behind it, it kind of keeps your attention on what her video, but it doesn't distract from what she's saying.
I kept thinking of feeding, by engaging critically with the media from this social justice perspective, we're feeding, whether information and food, the connection. Yeah, very good, thank you. So mindfulness, now we take the media literacy part, now we got the mindfulness part. So I asked AI for a definition of mindfulness, because AI, of course, knows everything. It was interesting that the definition of mindfulness, which it says comes from or is especially used by Eastern religions, the focal point is self. And as you're reading, cultivates this awareness for self. It's about connection with self, with the divine, and personal well-being. But it's general, very non-specific. Anybody could use this approach, actually, because here's something. I had to go out during Anne's presentation this morning, but she wrote that book on redeeming conflict. And in there, she says that a person, a communicator that is self-aware is a better communicator. So in this sense, mindfulness works for all of us, because the more we're self-aware, the better communicator we will be, and I think the better creator of media stories and messages we will be. But it is an emphasis on self, but we are people of community, right? There's also that idea of silence, especially all the images you see, it's usually a person in a lotus position, but they're being quiet. And it's really hard to be quiet in this digital age, wouldn't you agree? Whether it's sound or whether it's visuals. I mean, we could turn off the sound on our phones and on our computers, but we still have all these images coming at us all the time. And how do we shed that? At night we used to say we dream because our brain is processing everything that we experience during the day. But now it's like on overload. So mindfulness is a way that we can, I think, take care of that. It can take us to a place where we have a much more calm, contemplative approach to the media in our lives, so that the media we create can come from that place of contemplation. So in the Catholic context, of course, it's not just self, it's God and others. We have a peripheral awareness of God, creation. We say the universe, but we think of creation, neighbor, humanity. Then silence and contemplation. Even if we're not contemplative sisters, or if we don't work for a contemplative community, it's more of a way of being. When we see things and how we discern what we're watching and what it means to us. And discernment, of course, is the next thing. Then a connection, of course, to the sacraments as essential to the spiritual journey. And we are in this era of this age, for our country anyway, of Eucharistic renewal. And, you know, the sacraments are external signs of internal realities. That's what cinema is. Cinema and media they're external signs of interior realities. And in a way, that's how our stories, not in a way, it's how they can be sacramental, because they reflect our inner reality and our stories. So, did you all see this when the Pope prayed for the end of the pandemic? Wasn't that one of the most beautiful things you ever saw? I talked to the head of the Vatican Dicastery for Communication, Paolo Ruffini, I think his name is, and he said, you know, they couldn't have planned the gray day and the rain. They didn't plan for that, but yet they had this perfect canopy and environment and stage and studio of St. Peter's Square that day that really led it to be an international media prayer event. And I will always treasure that. You can still find it, of course, on YouTube. Mindfulness in the Catholic Christian context going on. So the integration of human and gospel values, because as we know from Gaudium et Spes, gospel values are human values. Authentic human values are authentic gospel values. Then the integration with principles of Catholic social teaching, the personal, communitarian, social responsibility aspect, and then the whole person. Not just speaking to the mind, but speaking to the emotions and the action, thoughts, emotions, and behavior aspect of the person. Some of this is going to sound repetitive, but I hope at the end you will be able to take some essentials away with you. Media mindfulness, building on media literacy and critical media literacy education, is a human, spiritual, and formational imperative for the 21st century. It's an imperative, because how do we live in this world if we're not making sense of it? You can say, well, I don't pay attention to ads, I don't pay attention to billboards. You don't have any choice. And sound, when we're in an environment where there's a lot of sound, whether we're in the living room with a football game going on or something else, sound is physical. It touches our eardrums. It works because our eardrums, it makes our eardrums vibrate. We can't see sound, but yet it touches us more deeply than an image will, because we feel it. So that's why it's becoming so much more physical, that we remember it more, and it's influencing us more and impacting us more. I distinguish between influence and impact. Impact to me is a car wreck. It's out of control. Are we getting to that point? Are we going from media influence on our lives and behavior, where it tells us who we are and who we're supposed to be? Or is it now, if it just comes into our lives and we just take off without consideration of it? Maybe we have it under control, but what about the people with whom we live and with whom we share faith, even at our parish level, where we work? So media mindfulness focuses on personal media consumption of media and technology within the framework of Catholic beliefs and values. It invites us to critically engage with media, consumption and creation, whether we're consuming media or creating it. Media mindfulness works either way. If we're going to create something, what are the guidelines we use? We know from our charisms of the communities we work with what our guidelines are. But what are the media guidelines we work with? Then it invites us to critically engage, like I said, right? And it aligns with Catholic social teaching, of course, spirituality. But it encourages us to take responsibility for our media consumption and content creation. I think we do, or we wouldn't be here if it didn't mean something to us already. So I don't mean to say that it doesn't already. But think of the people with whom you are sharing faith and with whom you communicate. And I actually love that bowl of media literacy and the elements in media literacy. What are the sources of this message? Who's the audience for this message? We'll get into that more in a few minutes. But I love, it's just such a a calming image of quiet. The bowl, it's like that's a busier one. So again, in our Catholic context, we're looking at the context, initial and ongoing formation of people with whom we share faith, but then in religious life, because hopefully we're reaching potential vocations to the communities that we work with and for. How do we share our charisms and who do we seek to reach with our message? We want to integrate mindfulness with practices of Catholic beliefs and spirituality, and to emphasize the importance of discernment, prayer, empathy in our writings and in the stories we tell. And then always within the Catholic context. These are some of the elements that it could, plus you could add more. Discernment of choices. Any of you get the New York Times? Do you get it online? It comes every day in your feed. So do you notice every Thursday it tells you what you're supposed to watch this weekend? Do you ever click on it? Click on it, because it'll give you the highlights of the major platforms. Especially Netflix always seems to come first. I don't know if they paid for that or not. But then it'll give you the 50 best films on Netflix today. Come on. Number one, I don't know if there are 50 really great films on Netflix anymore. Any of you all watch movies? Okay, so I was in Missouri in a diocese near here, and it wasn't St. Louis, and I was speaking to 200 Catholic school teachers, high school and grammar school. And I said to them, so do any of you watch movies? And nobody answered. And I said, really? You haven't been to a movie recently? Nobody moved, nobody. I said, raise your hand. Nothing. I said, do you mean to tell me not one of you people has watched a Hallmark Christmas movie in the last year? Well, the place went to pieces. Because how many of you think Hallmark Christmas movies are Christian? You want to have fun. Analyze a Hallmark Christian movie, or Christmas movie, because they are not Christian. They have a church that has like a bench or something, and not even as good as the benches in the Apostles of the Sacred Hearts movie there. They'll have a bench and they'll have a wedding, but there's no Christianity. And I remember it was Kathy Lee Gifford. She posted out there one time about a couple years ago that we should be so grateful for Hallmark Christmas movies because they're so Christian. And I went, what kind of a Christian are you? Don't tell her I said that. No, I'm sure she's a good person. What I mean is it you go and you find a Christmas tree farmer and get married? Is that, I don't know. You can have a lot of fun with that, by the way. You can print off of the internet. You can have a party about Hallmark movies. And it gives you a checklist of how you can tell. And Netflix is making them now. Even in Italian, they made one last year. And I went, it's a little bit grittier than a Hallmark one, to tell you the truth. But just to say, they're all getting on the same formula. How did I get off on that? Anyway, how do we incorporate prayer and scripture into our... We have movie Bible nights. We'll take the Sunday... I actually edited and co-wrote a series of books called Lights, Camera, Faith, where we take a major motion picture and put it in dialogue with the Sunday readings. We have a 3-year cycle, and then we have one on the Ten Commandments, and we have one that we're waiting for editing on the Beatitudes and 7 Deadly Sins, and that was fun to write. There's a lot of deadly sins in movies. But to tell you the truth, if you're going to have drama, real drama, you need sin. But just enough to tell the story, as Flannery O'Connor said. You don't need to overdo it. Well, Hollywood go overdo it. But anyway. But how do we use our technology to align with Catholic values? That's always the question. On your table, you have a little cards with this think paradigm on it, a process. And there's extra somewhere. Where's Jenny? She's got extra if anybody wants to take more home. You can take more home. And you can make copies of this because we did not originate this. We stole it off the internet. Was it Socrates or somebody who came up with this think paradigm? But it's perfect for media analysis. And anybody can use it, from a 5-year-old, because you can sit and ask a 5-year-old, was that kind? Was that nice? You know, but to think, and you can memorize it. Is this true? Okay, so we did a whole thing on truth this morning. But you know, everything in the Bible is true, and some of it really happened. So what kind of truth are we talking about? There might be spiritual truth, even if it's not factual. That idea keeps us away from a really black and white interpretation of things too, right? To keep that in mind. But, so is it true? Is it helpful? Can you imagine a kid who's a bully, if he had this taped to his computer or his phone before he was, or she was putting something up on Instagram that was going to bully somebody? Is it helpful? Is it inspiring? I mean, think of a bully text, like so-and-so is so fat. Well, is it inspiring? Is it true? It might be true. She might be overweight in your eyes. But do all the others tick? Can you tick off the others? Is it necessary to point to that person's perhaps weakness or flaw, if that's what we want to call it? And is it kind? Is it kind? You know, you go to Mr. Rogers and his mother, who told him, when things are bad, look to the helpers. If you want hope when times are bad, look to those who are helping. So this is it kind of reminds me of that. To ask about kindness, to look for kindness in ourselves and what we produce, I think is a really good thing to keep in mind. But then in what we consume, in what we choose to consume. And after we watch it, why can't we do an analysis? I mean, we don't have to sit in front with a card there, you know, but if we're talking with somebody in the family and to say, well, you know, I'm thinking that was a great true story, but based on a true story, which means they took liberties. But was it really kind? Was it ethical? You know, what was, to become habitual about asking questions of the stories we tell and the stories we see, to make it a virtue, to make it a habit of being, to make it natural. Then we can go a little bit deeper here. Media literacy and media mindfulness wheel. This is what Sister Gretchen invented. And it started in 1996, and it's still valid today. This is the one that lines up very well with Cinema Divina, Lectio Divina, and theological reflection. So the first thing is, what's going on? What am I watching? What am I seeing? We're going to analyze a couple of things in a minute. So what's going on? Well, this is a commercial about Coca-Cola. Okay? You know, and what's its aim? Well, its aim is to get me to like Coca-Cola, to like the brand. How is it going to do that? It's going to make me laugh. It's going to make me cry. It's going to use music, country music or rock and roll music from the 50s and 60s so that it's transcending generations, transcending up, not down. And that's what's going on. So what's really going on? Who pains and who gains? And if we look at it from who pains and who gains is a very Christian way to look at it, because somebody's being left out and excluded. I was in South Africa 12 years ago. They had a national religious education conference, and it was in Durban, South Africa. When I prepared my presentation, I had to give the same one 4 times because everybody had to go to do this. You know, they had to see everything. I used 3 Coca-Cola commercials that were created specifically for South Africa. I didn't know that they were created with the government. But they were all about how Coca-Cola makes you happy, Coca-Cola brings your family together, Coca-Cola makes the world a better place, it makes it a peaceful place. The messages were all on point. And then I'm thinking, so you get kids hooked on Coca-Cola, you get them liking the brand because it's creating positive feelings towards the product. And then you don't have adequate dentistry in South Africa. You don't have adequate health care in South Africa. They're all going to be addicted to sugar, which at this point they are not. How is that benefiting? And you know, the people were really, the first 3 times I gave it, the people were really engaged. Then the last one, this woman walks in, really nicely dressed, she sits in the back. Then after it's over, she comes up to me and she goes, "Sister, how dare you?" And I said, "Excuse me?" And she said, "We don't have the money to create positive messages. But if we put and she was from the government, and she said, if we put a product and we put it, you know, with government money, you know, this is how we can help change the culture." And then I asked those questions. I said, "But what about health? What about hooking kids on sugar? What about the side effects? What are the consequences down the line?" Because that's what you're doing, is creating a relationship with the product that is high in sugar. And she just went, she turned and walked away. I never thought that it had been a government deal. She said, "We can't afford, we need the products to come in and help us create these socially positive commercials." So think of some of the things I just mentioned, and we're going to watch a commercial now, and then we'll talk about it.
Let your heart be light. From now on, our troubles will be out of sight. Hang a shining star upon the highest bough, and have yourself a merry little Christmas now.
Were you able to see that clearly? Not too clear. But did you see who sponsored that? Did you hear the music? Did somebody get the story? What was the, somebody tell the story, say it loud.
You got the impression that the kid was checked out, but he was making a video.
Exactly. Yeah, and don't we think that sometimes our kids are checked out, they're not participating, but maybe we can give the kid the benefit of a doubt. So he gave the gift to the family of making a video of their time together, and he played it on Christmas morning. So high sentimental value, would you say? Yeah, and the music, sentimental, nostalgia. But was that a wealthy family? No, just like a normal middle-class family, right? Are Apple products aimed at middle-class families? No. This is very aspirational. They want you to reach to be able to get an Apple product because it's going to bring your family together. It's going to give you a really nice Christmas. And the troublesome boy that you think is a problem is going to turn into a great kid. I mean, these are all the subtleties of this story, aren't they? And do you think you feel good about Apple at the end of that little commercial? You think you might go, oh, you know, yeah, $1,000 a pop, I don't know. Yes, Beth.
So I think what's happening there
Loud.
is, I'm trying to be loud. So would it not have been much more of an experience for that whole family if the child with the camera had participated in what was going on? Why was having the video more more important than having him present.
Because they wouldn't sell the cell phone.
That's always my question, because these can be barriers to relationship, and it was for that child. It kept him on the outside of the family circle for that whole day.
Yeah. But yet, if it's time for you to get a cell phone for your child when they turn 18, ha ha ha. So I have a niece, and she was 7, and she was going to turn 8, and her mother said, "So what do you want for your birthday?" An iPhone. She turned 9. "What do you want for your birthday?" An iPhone. Her mother comes, "No, no, no." And she still doesn't have one. She's turning 10, no iPhone.
But her friends all have one.
Of course they do, and they're always on it too. So what do children learn? That they're socialized into life with a phone in their hand. And it can happen in the convent too. New members coming in, and the members who are already there, we got cell phones in our hands. Yes?
So my takeaway from that, I see that as purely an image advertisement. That their primary objective is not to sell the product, but to enhance their image. Because there's obviously, a lot of people could make the arguments that, these products are no good, they're taking our kids away from families, so they're countering that. And you'll see that a lot, like McDonald's Corporation will do a lot of image advertising. They used to do it a lot like around the Olympics. No product sales in it at all, but you'd see the toddler raising like it on the podium, getting an award, in the family, or Budweiser does it with their Clydesdales, like prison. All image, no product sales, but to just enhance it.
But it's telling a story though.
Absolutely, but that's how I perceived that. That was just, they were wanting to enhance, so it wasn't that, it didn't matter that it was a middle class family who might not be able to afford the product. They were just showing, aren't we good that we put out, doesn't this make you feel good?
Well, it's creating an emotional bond. So when it comes time to get a phone, we're thinking, iPhone, Android, iPhone, Android, I have an iPhone. I will always have an iPhone. Get a Mac, never go back. We say that in the convent. We are tarnished. We are vulnerable people. That was very good. So here's, side by side is theological reflection. This comes from Bernard Lonergan, by the way. And everybody, there's several versions. In fact, you can get into 5 or 6 questions or points. But this aligns quite well with the media mindfulness wheel. So if we attended and paid attention to that commercial, we talked about what was going on. Then we had a little bit of a dialogue here. We analyzed it a little bit. But then when we evaluate it, we've evaluated it too, we know what it's for. And then what response seems appropriate in the light of my Christian beliefs when I look at a commercial like that? When it comes to time to get a phone, you think about it. When it comes time to replace your phone, have you thought about what happens to the phone once you get rid of it? We don't see it anymore. Do we know what happens to phones when they go to get deconstructed? They go to third world countries. There are women there in childbearing years without any protections, taking apart these things with chemicals and elements in them. I think of Bangladesh especially. China is refusing our e-trash now. But before, it was taking our e-trash, and it was the poor that are doing this, not the rich people. But even if it's wealthy people, it doesn't matter. They don't have protections. I don't know what we do about that. I don't know how we can make that system more moral, but I think it's something to be thought about. So what actions? I think when it comes time to replace our phones, when it comes time to get a new one, that we then try to make the gospel choice, because now we don't have a choice. We have to be connected. There's a movie called Screened Out. It's on Amazon. You have to rent it for $3.99, but it's worth it. It's written by a filmmaker from Canada. It's made by a filmmaker from Canada who, with a friend, spent a year going across the US and Canada to interview people about the role of a smartphone in their lives, because he was seeing that, suicides are up with this access to the internet and everything. What's going on? So he, first of all, threw his away. Now, this is a working man, but he was on this year-long project. Maybe his partner, the man, his co-filmmaker, had a phone. But his wife couldn't do the journey with him. They had 3 or 4 kids. They're all in school. All the notices. In Canada, it's snow days every day. So, no, that's not a slam on Canada, but you need your advice, you need notices that come through your phones. Everything is, we don't have a choice. We have to be part of this society, this culture. So how do we make that a more mindful and Christian choice? I don't have the answer. I think it's what we all have to figure out on our own. So getting towards the end here, no, we still have some time, good. Here's another one to look at. Is there a way we could turn the lights down at least? Or close a couple of curtains? Because these lights are closed, but down over there, the light's coming in. Because this is really, well, I don't want to influence your interpretation of what you're about to see. Just like the Apple commercial, had any of you ever seen that before when it was on TV? I saw it for the first time on TV, but it was a few years ago. It was like 4 or 5 years ago. This particular video is about at least 5 or 6 years old, but it will live forever to me. Okay, thank you. Oh, thank you. God bless you. She's holding it. Turn up the sound, please. What did you think?
Confusing.
Excuse me?
It was confusing.
Confusing? Why?
I didn't know if it was a skateboard commercial, a wheel commercial. I didn't know what it was.
How many people even know what Salt River TV is? Was this on a regular TV?
Yeah, this was won a Primetime Emmy in Chicago. For the Midwest, actually. It was this company, and they went to these friars and they said, we want to make a movie about, religious life? Is there something you would, what can we do? And so the Salve Regina is what, well, I don't know now, but before, it was a hymn that we sang at the end of night prayer as religious. Now we sing a Marian hymn, but it used to only be the Salve Regina until, Vatican II or just after. And so they said, well, what can we be about? What could we put in it that would get people's attention? And they said, oh, brother so-and-so, he's really good with the skateboard. And he was very shy. I don't think he wanted to do it. And he agreed to do it. And I know it's hard to see, but we never see who he is. The closest look we get of his face is from the side. So there's an anonymity about this. And they just ran it as something beautiful.
What was the purpose?
What
was the purpose? Was it
I think they were trying to show about religious brothers, that they do something other, maybe that are monks, what monks, that maybe they're not just praying all day, Yes?
I just feel that, they may have had a purpose to expose the younger generation, because skateboards are for kids, right? Kids love skateboards. Skateboards are a huge culture. Skateboard culture is huge. So if you were putting this in prime time and maybe around a sports event or something where you knew you'd get a younger population, they would vibe with this video because it speaks to the unexpected, right? You think you know what a friar or a brother or being
Or who are these people?
right? Wow, this guy's
Because he is saying the rosary at one point. I don't know if you noticed that. Yeah.
But I think that's important to surprise people.
And I said it was a primetime Emmy. It was actually a daytime Emmy. So this ran during the day. But I don't know if it was a weekends or what. I saw another hand. Yes?
Yeah, much like what you said, the first takeaway that I got from it was they were showing that, people in religious life, they're not that much different than you and I. Like, they're real people. Like, they skateboarding, like you wouldn't think that. That was exactly what...
And nuns who play basketball. Yes. Mm-hmm. You don't think that caught the imagination of people? That was great. Anyway, yes.
Also, it kind of said how cool it was.
Who it was.
Contemplative life, being cool.
And cool, how cool it was. So, in this busy city of Chicago, because that was filmed in Chicago, you can have this contemplative person, right? Is that what you meant to say? I can't hear and you can't hear. We're really good here. I just got fitted for my new hearing aids before I came away. I should have done it a month ago. Anyway, yes. Yes. Thank you, sister.
I think it shows that prayer is not so removed from who we are, and you can bring who you are to your prayer and to religious life. And he connects through skateboarding. Maybe you paint, maybe you tap dance, but it's something that you don't have to lose about yourself in order to
You can integrate it into your life, into your new life. Yeah. Yes, this young lady and then the gentleman in the back. Yes.
The one thing that I didn't notice, though, was there any sort of call to action? Because everybody in this room who has familiarity with priests or religious brothers, we can all look at that and say that was great. Brothers and sisters are just normal people, and they can bring their own individuality into religious life. But would the average person watching this put those pieces together of, oh, he's a religious brother, he's praying the rosary, how do I become one? But I didn't see any sort of call to action to...
I actually do not have the answer to that question, but as far as I can see, there is no direct call to action. But do you know how Dostoevsky said, beauty will change the world? I think that maybe this is part of that. And we're very practical people, and so we're very goal-oriented. So I can see that. Even at the end, ever thought of religious life or ever thought of being a brother? They could have easily put that at the end, but maybe they were thinking, we'll get that, you know, that we don't have to put the words there, that it will show anyway. I used this last week with an inter-novitiate group here, based out of St. Louis, but I think they came in from Texas as well. There were 4 brothers, and the rest were 4 different communities of women, religious women. And I showed this, and I was really surprised that there were a couple that really didn't like it, and one of them was because it didn't show his community. It only showed one brother. That bothered the dickens out of her until finally, after like 10 minutes of conversation, another novice said, "Don't you think he just needed a day off?" I thought that was great. I don't know about you, but I feel like I need a day off sometimes. From being a nun, I mean, he was still who he was, but he was stepped away from the community for a way. Let me tell you, sometimes it's good to get away from the community for a day. Anybody will agree with me on that? Go ahead. Anyway, yes? Somebody over here?
I just wanted to say there's a difference between art and marketing.
Yeah. But can you use art and marketing? Okay. But good distinction. Yeah, the gentleman, yes.
To your point of why they didn't put something at the bottom at the end, they go to your point earlier of bad Christian movies tell you, they don't show you. So I think that's what this was doing. But the thing that I noticed about it was a really beautiful interplay of darkness and light that was very striking and made me think. And I just thought that was, to me, the darkness and light playing off each other said a lot.
You can get this on YouTube. Just Google skateboarding monk, Salve Regina. And you can, if you have a YouTube downloader, I use it in my presentations a lot. There was a lady here this morning who was at a presentation I gave quite a few years ago, and one on film reviews for Catholic newspapers that every Catholic newspaper or website that does news should be reviewing. They should have a film reviewer. And so I showed this film, and they all had to write a review of it. That was part of the workshop. And so they really had to work at it. But she said it completely changed her perspective of how she looked at media. And so if we had time, I'd make you write a review. But that's your homework, yes.
I was thinking that for young people, well, I remember a number of years ago, the movie about Mark Zuckerberg, how he started Facebook when he was at Yale, and the King's Speech. They were in competition for the
Oscar, King's Speech, and wasn't that called the Social Network, yeah.
And I saw both of them. And first of all, it took me half the movie to figure out what the heck was going on with Mark Zuckerberg one, because they were on trial, and then they were in this other trial, and they were back and forth as if they'd stolen the, from the...
He's basically a crook, yes.
Yeah. But I figured it out. The King's Speech I thought was great. We were talking to some young people, and they were saying, "Oh, I hope that Mark Zuckerberg one wins." And I said, "Really?" And they go, "No, because they see things differently than we do." I'm convinced, because we like a storyline. It starts and it has a middle and it's finished. But this back and forth
non-linear
film now,
yeah.
You jump forward, you're in the back, it's confusing to a person who likes a straight storyline. But I think young people would get a lot out of that and could appreciate it. Because it isn't a straight storyline, it isn't obvious what they're doing, but you can pick up all kinds of things.
And the music, the music and the visuals, I think, were very nice. You know what I got on the plane in Boston yesterday? There were 6 or 7 big guys with big skateboards who got on, and I said, "Is there a convention?" They said, "No, we just like to get together." I guess I don't know where their end point was, but skateboarding is still big. Somebody have a hand up back there? Yes.
I think in addition to the light part, the juxtaposition of the solo sport with the elements, I think the community wasn't there, but I think it was the nice two elements that was there.
You mean like the fire, the wind, water? Yeah. And the darkness. I mean, the storm coming in. It looked like the clouds coming in for a storm. Yeah. Can you speak a little louder?
Did they get results
I don't know. But if you Google skateboarding monk Salve Regina, and maybe you'll find an article about it. Because if you do one under video, you'll get the video, but if you just do it under Google, you might get more information. And I suppose I should have that information, but I don't, because otherwise you'd have nothing to do when you go. Right. Yes, one more, yes.
I noticed this was done by Spirit Juice. I don't know if people know Spirit Juice, but if you go and Google them, they've got really remarkable films, generally around the topic of religious life. They're very artful like this. It's a fabulous site to comb through and look around in Spirit Juice.
They do really good work. It's a young layman. Well, I don't know how young he is now, but when he started out, he was young. And he has a really big family. Some of the kids are adopted, but he loves to tell stories, and he loves Catholic themes. So, yeah. Anyone else? Okay. So it's okay if you didn't like it. It's okay if you feel disturbed by it, And I love that idea of between art and marketing and promotion. That's always going to be a little bit of a contention. So imagine we have a publishing company. We are a publishing entity, shall we say, and nonprofit, of course. All Catholic publishing is nonprofit, and just not because we intended it that way, because that's the way it turned out, but it's always how we use. You have to have the business model. You have to have the marketing model. Otherwise, you don't have a framework to put your stuff out there. And sometimes you really wonder, so it's good that we question ourselves. That's really good. So here's a little bit more just to kind of go to a wrap up here. The critical media literacy, again, looking beyond the individual's critical thinking skills to apply them to digital communication, to information and entertainment, which you cannot separate. And to tell you the truth, if there's one area the church does not teach enough on, it's leisure. They're very good on information, but they rarely mention entertainment, and they very rarely mention leisure time and how they should do something on leisure. Even the Pope's document on the family talks about man caves for dads. He doesn't call it that, but he says when a father comes in, he walks right by the kids and he goes and locks himself in the room with his television and his computers, his technology. He's referring to the man cave phenomenon. But leisure, I think, is a bigger question. And then, of course, as Pope Francis is always telling us to look at that idea of throwaway culture. And that brings us to the next idea is who is the human person in a digital age? And I spoke to the Union of Superiors General International out of Rome last week, and I'll be doing 2 more talks for them. But the Mothers General came from communities all over the world, and I imagine some of them know practically where this picture was taken, because this is the reality in which they live. So the idea of the human person, the anthropological dimension, Catholic social teaching is applying gospel values in images. I mean, this could be exploitative, or within the context of what we're doing, could it be something different? And to look at the human person at the center. An individual in community and a community of individuals, but community being, the common good of the community being the dominant theme. So bringing Catholic social teaching and media literacy together, and like all good media people, I used 10-point type for this. Sorry about that. But it just basically lists the themes of Catholic social teaching, which I'm sure you memorized and think about every day in your prayers. So I won't reread them for you, but the impact of digital media on the environment, on the physical health of persons, because again, we're talking about e-trash, and we're talking about also the physical impact of this constant drone of visual and audio media, and its accessibility or lack of accessibility to the poor. Like, didn't Anne say this morning in her statistics that social media has only reached 60% of the world, and there's 40% that are not part of the conversation? Why? They're poor. Even though a lot of poor people have access, when they make choices, are they choosing food or are they choosing technology? Because all the kids have to have a phone. I think of Los Angeles during the pandemic, though. Kids are having to wait till their parents came home at night because they were doing service industry. They didn't have to stay home. But their kids couldn't do their homework till their parents brought their phones home in the evening. It took months for them to get iPads for all these kids. So, but if we can take just a moment and just think, and maybe in our prayer, of how Catholic social teaching and our digital lives come together, because there's so many considerations here, how they intersect, how they change us, or how we let them change us. How many of you keep your notifications on all the time? Anybody? How many keep your notifications on from 7 in the morning till 10 at night? That's me. And then not everything, because you can go through and choose what you want to get notified from, right? How many of you have more than one phone? I have 2. Well, the Archdiocese made us get it. They gave it to us. Why would you not take it? No, but they did. I was traveling internationally a lot when I was out of LA. Now I'm going to be I'll be working out of Rome for the next 2 to 3 years. In fact, God willing, in a month I get to go. I had knee replacement and then I sprained my ankle. So if I can actually get there, I'll be doing media literacy from Rome. But so one phone, if the Archdiocese doesn't come show up at my farewell party and say, I need your phone back, I'll have 2. One to use when I, with a US phone number, and then I have an Italian one now too. But that's an old phone. Apple will not support it in another couple years. And then what will I do? I'll just have to continually change out those cards. You ever try to do that with a pin? It's dangerous. Okay, so I wanted to, are we at the end? A little, okay, so we're at the end here. I'm just going to give you the references. You can take a picture of this. Whoops, sorry. These are what I based my talk on. Towards the Full Presence is the pastoral reflection engagement in social media. And then all the way back to 1991, you have the first mention of media literacy in a document. That new document that just came out mentions it once in a footnote. Mentions critical thinking once, when these are imperatives that can help us, and they still hasn't got there yet. Okay, one more thing. If you want to order any of those books, if you wrote them down, you could just look up my name and Sister Gretchen if you want. And there's a code there, and you can get a discount. We don't give them out very often. Take advantage. God bless you, and thank you. I'm sorry for going over. Thank you.